Are we ready to get started? All right, here we go then. This episode is sponsored by Hired.com. Are you searching for a new job? That can be stressful, scary, and time-consuming. Pushy recruiters try to sell you on roles you don't actually want, and the job boards make you feel like you're throwing your resume into a black hole, never to be seen again. And sometimes you go all the way through the interview process just to find out at the very end that the salary, offer, or company culture doesn't match what you're looking for. Hired is the world's most intelligent talent matching platform for full-time and contract opportunities in engineering, development, design, product management, data science, sales, and marketing. We make your job search faster, focused, and stress-free. Instead of endlessly applying to companies and hoping for the best, Hired puts you in control of when and how you connect with compelling new opportunities. After completing one simple application, top employers apply to hire you. And on Hired, you receive personal interview requests and upfront salary information so you can make informed decisions about what opportunities to pursue over a condensed timeline. Hired offers access to more than 4,000 innovative employers, including big brand names like Facebook and smaller emerging startups. The size and type of company you want to connect with is totally up to you. And we help you find new opportunities in 17 major cities in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Open to relocation? Let them know. Your privacy and autonomy in your job search is of utmost importance. And if you go check them out at the show's link, that's hire.com/JavaScript Jabber, you can get double the hiring bonus that they offer. That's $600 instead of $300. So go check them out at hire.com/JavaScript Jabber today. Hey everybody, and welcome to another JavaScript Jabber show. This week on our panel we have Aimee Knight.
Hello from Nashville.
Cory House.
Coming at you from sunny Kansas City.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv, and this week we have two special guests. We have Sean Merron.
Burning up in Austin, Texas.
And Kevin Griffin.
And slightly uncomfortable in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Nice.
That's honest.
So do you guys want to give us a brief introduction, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So me, Sean Merron, and Kevin Griffin are both the host of the Two Frugal Dudes podcast. And we're both just middle-class software engineers. But at the same time, we also love putting our money to work and just started the podcast just really to help other people in the same situations as us, to kind of set up their lives for financial success. So I'm still a full-time 9-to-5 employee. And Kevin owns a small business, and really we kind of bring both perspectives to the middle class as far as just really personal finance and living a frugal life to fund our needs.
Nice. So, Kevin, what does your business do? I'm curious about that as well.
So part of my business is independent consulting, software development stuff. I just recently started bootstrapping a training company, so doing in-person and public and private training on software development. So it's something I've done for a very long time, kind of privately. Now I'm trying to make it more public. So the company's called SwiftKick, like a swift kick in the you-know-what.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So Aimee was super excited to invite you guys on, and so I'll let her take things away because she says she has a million questions, and yeah, I guess Cory and I'll chime in where we need to.
I guess to kind of paint the scene. So, because of all these changes I went through last year, I'm just trying to be, I'm always like very, very, very conservative with my spending, and I have that part down. But, we're fortunate enough in this industry, I think, for a lot of us, we're not necessarily living like paycheck to paycheck. So I have a little bit left over at the end of, every paycheck, and I'm trying to figure out the smart thing to do with that money. And I feel like, as developers, at least for me, like this isn't something, if I have, a couple hours of free time, at the end of the day or my time on the weekend, like I want to be playing with like a new library or something. I don't necessarily want to be reading like finance books. So when I talked to Sean and Kevin at Revolution Conf a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about having this podcast, I was like, man, can I just like ask you guys a million questions for an hour and, get your thoughts on what to do? So it all started because there are these quote unquote like financial advisors, And some of them really are more or less like insurance salespeople. And so I was trying to talk to them about these different like insurance options that someone was telling me about to be used as investing versus just like the traditional stuff. Like, we all know like max out your 401k if you have one. But what do you do after that? Like talking about opening up a Roth IRA, but there's all these different stipulations with that. So all that to say, I feel like rather than asking more questions right now, like maybe Sean or Kevin, let's see, do you guys want to start with, I think one of the very interesting things you told me was, and I think it was you, Kevin, the different types of financial advisors out there and what you guys are doing on your podcast.
Sure. So one of the big things that people don't realize is that financial advisors out there, they're not like doctors, so they don't have to actually work in your best interest. There's no legal reason for them to have to work in your best interest. So they could sit down with you, look at all your finances, look at all the money you have coming in and going out, and they could say, I think you should put all your money in these funds over here. And depending on the type of financial advisor, they might get kickbacks for selling those type of funds. What Sean and I talk about on the podcast specifically are fiduciary advisors. And these are people who are just legally not allowed to accept kickbacks from different funds or different brokerages. So the nice thing about fiduciaries is they will help you to the best of their ability. The kind of bad thing is you pay them for their services. That's how they actually get paid. One thing that Sean and I really haven't had a chance to discuss on the podcast yet is that these laws are actually changing right now at this exact moment.
I just read that actually a couple weeks ago.
And Sean and we haven't really had a time to digest it yet, but the understanding I have, and Sean, correct me if you read this differently, is that basically everyone has to be a fiduciary now,
yep.
Unless they specifically get you to sign a piece of paper that says you are willing to let them sell you crap. Or stuff that they're paid for. It's I wish I could remember the acronym. It's BIC. Sean, correct me because I don't remember what the form is at the moment. Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact acronym as well, but this already exists over in the UK. It's like that where it's required by law to be a fiduciary advisor to act in the best interests of your clients, and that's the big issue we see over here. And I think really a lot of the brokers, we call them, or the financial advisors over here in the States, really want to act in your best interest, honestly. But these companies that they work for kind of tend to brainwash them into selling these financial products that have higher cost and try to beat the market, which is really tough for someone to do. So Kevin and I really, we don't have any say in the financial advising world. We're not financial advisors. We don't have any training on it or anything, but we've just kind of done all of our own research over the years. And Kevin actually teaches a Financial Peace University class by Dave Ramsey for his church out of Goodwill, and just really good money habit tips that we've kind of learned over the years. We wanted to just kind of spread those to other people in the industry. And that's kind of why we started the podcast, because we always talk about it amongst each other. And we're like, hey, all these conversations are getting lost. Why don't we just start talking about this, and documenting it along the way. And what do you know? We go to Revolution Conf back in earlier this month, and we saw Aimee there, and there's just a great example of how this community, we're all engineers, and we tend to be very analytical, and we tend to make decent money, but at the same time, unlike maybe Aimee, but there are still many software engineers that are maybe living a paycheck to paycheck, or don't even have an emergency fund, or have no clue where to invest their money, really don't have the time to even figure it out. So it was fun just having that conversation with you.
So I'll lead with my question that I asked you, and then other people, I guess, can chime in with their questions because maybe, there are other people. Like I'm fortunate enough, fortunate is not the right word. My situation is fortunate. It's just me, so I don't have dependents or anything like that. So I think that affords me, that I have a little bit left over. So my question to Sean was, I'm already maxing out my 401k, which by maxing out, meaning I am not going over the company match because once I do that, I think I could do better on my own. And then also I'm going to max out the Roth IRA, but, I'm limited to how much I can put in there. So my question was, if I have money left over at the end of the month, what should I do with that money? Since I believe it was when the Roth IRA is capped at like $5,500 a year.
That's correct.
Okay. So what do I do with any money I have left over after that? Because, one of the I call them salespeople, one of these insurance salespeople was trying to convince me that I should look into life insurance as like a savings tool. And
No.
that didn't seem like a good idea to me. So I wanted to know what could I do rather than just like putting this money in a savings account where it's really not, it's like growing negligibly.
Yeah, that's usually like the initial red flag with financial advisors is when they try to immediately sell you life insurance, especially like whole or universal life.
Yes.
But yeah, beyond that, the typical response that I've known from a long time ago and that is kind of said by many advisors still is to kind of, put in your company match. And then after that, you put the rest of your money into a Roth IRA, max that out. The first question really that I think any really good financial advisor would ask someone, and it's a question I always ask people in the first place, is what are you saving for? It's key to figure that out. Like, why are you saving this money? Because you could max out your 401k after your Roth, or you could start to put money maybe in an emergency fund. Maybe you don't even have that yet. The important thing is to figure out when are you going to need the money and what are you going to need it for? And a lot of people just say, well, I just want the money to grow. Well, for what? For retirement? When? Do you even know when you might want to retire? Like how early or how late you might want to retire? So once you know when you need the money for, maybe it's to say a common example we get maybe is to save for a house, like a down payment on a house. Okay, well, then yeah, as long as
that was my answer.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of times, like if that's the case, then you may need the money, I don't know, a few years from now. So you don't want to put it in some risky investment, like, like the stock market. You want to put it maybe in like a safer investment. Now, the cool thing about Roth IRAs, the money you put in there is already taxed. So you can withdraw those contributions, tax and penalty free, before, at any point, because it's the contributions that you paid from post-tax dollars, as long as you don't withdraw the earnings from it. So sometimes people use their Roth also as a savings vehicle in case they don't use it. I personally use my Roth as my emergency fund because if I don't keep a lot of money like in my basic checking and savings. I don't even have a savings account. I just keep a little bit in checking to cover my expenses, plus a little bit for a buffer. But anything past that, I know I can withdraw from my Roth IRA. If a true emergency came up, I have $5,500 in there I can take out if need be. And I also have a normal brokerage account. But so I would, the typical recommendation, of course, is get that company match because that's money that your company is going to put in there extra for you, and then try to max out that Roth IRA. Now, if you are saving for a house, though, you have a choice with that Roth IRA as far as where you invest that money. And again, if you're going to need to put that money down on a house in a few years from now, then you don't want to invest that Roth IRA money into like a risky investment, like maybe like just the S&P 500, the total stock market index fund. So maybe you'd rather put it into something safer, like a bond fund, or even more safe choice would be like a bank CD. I really think that's the safest thing you can get for the best return you can get. Is just like a CD from a bank, in my opinion. That was a lot of information.
So, I'm thinking about a lot of this, but I'm in a little bit different situation since I'm self-employed. So some months are really, really good, and some months are really not good. And I figured out recently, I went through kind of a for lack of a better term, a period where money wasn't coming in, that I needed to have an emergency fund. And so when I'm saving up so that when I have a lean month, things don't come to a grinding halt. And so one of the things that I'm seeing, though, is that I need to save up a lot more money than I actually currently have. And so, yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that, because it's not always possible for me to set aside that money.
Yeah, I can. I feel you there, Charles. From my standpoint, I keep two emergency funds. I keep a personal emergency fund and then a business one, because you never. This is more from my wife's standpoint. My wife should not know when my business is doing well. My wife should not know when my business is doing bad. So from her, because it's exactly what Charles said. If the business is having a really good month, that's great. But if there's a couple months that are just they're the valleys where the money's not coming in the same way that it has before. But what I do in that case is I pay myself a salary, and I pay myself the dividends from my corporation. Those are fixed amounts every month, and I have that part of my business budget. But in the months where the business is doing really well, I throw money into a business emergency fund, and for the business that accounts for about 5 months worth of what I would pay myself. And luckily I've never had to cut into that, but it's there, it's liquid, it's ready to be used if I need to use it. But I understand it's really hard as the money comes in to put that money aside. I had to build it up over the course of like 2 or 3 years. It just took that much time. And now it's there, it's ready to go, and everything extra I can use to actually invest in my business.
Yeah, I'm finding that it's really hard to set that money aside sometimes.
There's so many better things I could probably do with that money than just let it sit there, but those dollars have a particular job, and that's self-insurance.
Yeah, exactly. And in the employee world, it's a similar kind of, I guess, risk appetite, equation or thought process you have to go through to think about how long you need. I'm sure it's much different in the business owner world, but in my world, my particular job is in high demand as a software engineer in the languages I write. So I know I could go out and get work within at least less than a month if I needed to, and have enough to cover my expenses. So I keep very minimum in my emergency fund in my checking account. But someone, that doesn't have that capability, maybe needs to keep a much longer amount in their emergency fund. It really just depends on, how long do you think you might need the money for? And you have to kind of just do that and risk tolerance yourself, or maybe your significant other may have enough to cover the expenses if you were to lose your job, and you don't need as much. Another common backup plan that we talk about is like disability. Like if you're in a field of work, maybe where you need disability insurance. Like I don't personally need short-term disability in my field of work, but maybe someone else does in their line of work. And it's just, it depends on your unique situation and what you do for a living.
And if you're self-employed, it's almost impossible to get short-term disability insurance. I've learned this the hard way.
So what's kind of I'm pretty familiar with Dave Ramsey's stuff. We have the home study version of Financial Peace University. But what's kind of the first thing that people should be doing for their own financial well-being? I mean, we can talk about investing, I guess, or we can talk about financial well-being, but I think if we manage the basics, then we can confidently invest in the other areas that we feel like we ought to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I'll pick that up. I follow the Dave Ramsey model, at least for the first couple steps, because I think it's real good advice. Number one is you need that basic emergency fund, and I use $1,000. That's most real emergencies will come under that $1,000 mark. you never know nowadays with the way that the political spectrum is going, whether or not we're going to need more in our emergency funds. But usually $1,000 covers it, no problem.
That's really oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that's kind of interesting because I've heard anywhere from like 6 months of expenses to a year of expenses, which is what I've been shooting for.
Wow. We haven't got there yet.
Okay.
Because what we're really interested in is kind of the second step, and that's to get rid of all of our consumer debt. Those are things like car payments, student loans, credit cards, anything that's not your house. So if you have a mortgage, we don't consider that consumer debt. But everything else, you need to get rid of that as quickly as possible. There's different methods for doing that. Some people talk about consolidating. I don't really subscribe to that. There's also the debt snowball, which means you work with your lowest balance first, pay that off as quickly as you can, then move on to the next lowest. Once you get all your debt done, then we want to go grow our emergency fund to 3 to 6 months of expenses. I lean more towards the 3 months. Kind of like what Sean said before is my worst case scenario is I'll just go get a job. If it ever comes down to that, hopefully not. But I have earning potential. I don't anticipate having to be out of work for more than 3 months. Something will have happened. And then after that, we can get into it's the investment stuff. So setting up retirement funds. If you have kids, how do you pay for college? You always make sure that paying for school comes after setting up your retirement accounts. And then if you have mortgages and you want to pay those off, you pay those off. And then you just continue investing in building money and wealth. But the most important thing is all your debt's gone. So you're really just paying for the necessities.
Yeah. Kevin, this is also where it's nice to have myself and Kevin's perspective on the podcast because he really understands the Dave Ramsey's ways. And me personally, I went a different route, and something that means a lot to me is early retirement. And it's something that you'll probably never hear in the Dave Ramsey world is the words early retirement. So it's cool to see how you may hear financial peace, financial independence, but really the niche that I kind of focus on and the thing I really want in my life is early retirement. And the way I kind of came about that is through I've kind of been involved in the startup world on the side. I'm a software engineer, and like many other software engineers, I think we all have ideas spinning in our head all the time for things we want to create. And I'm always working on something on the side. It's kind of like a hobby, but I still need to pay the bills. And to this point, nothing has taken off on the side, and I wanted to make sure I had a backup plan to be able to work on my inventions or innovations, if you will, kind of full time or on my own time, to start building the ideas in my own head. So I said, that's when I started to question retiring in my 60s. I said, if nothing takes off by then, because I can't really dedicate fully to it, then I want to have a way to be able to do that. And that's where I started crunching some numbers and figuring out that early retirement was a possibility. So within the next few years now, in my mid 30s, I'll be able to I'll have enough money in investments to passively pay for all of our expenses for the rest of our lives. So no matter if any of my side gigs would kick off or not, it wouldn't matter. I know my expenses are covered, which makes that process a lot easier. So by going through that process, I kind of realized the steps that I've taken to get to that point where I'm kind of on autopilot now. And it kind of starts out with really just understand, really lifestyle adjustments, I guess. Really understanding what retirement means to me. What is the standard of living that, what does the word rich really mean to me and my family? We kind of kept going up the materialistic ladder. And then the first time we really challenged ourselves to come back down and reduce our standard of life is when we realized the true experiences that matter in life. But doing that kind of soul searching initially really helped so I can figure out what we need to pay for in retirement. And then I think the next step that's really important for people is to track their money. I don't believe you can go nowhere or go anywhere until you accept where you are right now and being able to see that. And no one or anyone that doesn't have a budget yet is really going to probably be shocked by where their money's going. I mean, I couldn't believe how much Taco Bell and Chick-fil-A, those small expenses were adding up, to these large entertainment expenses every month. Because once you see it, you have a metric that you can track against, and then you can really start tackling each of those budget categories and totally overhaul your life. And to funnel that money, like Kevin talked about, towards your emergency fund or tackling that debt. And man, once you see it, and you can start seeing, all the extra money you have every month, and you start tackling that debt, you start just looking around the house and think about, all the cars you can downsize or things you can sell that are laying around from previous hobbies, that you can just start throwing all kinds of money at that debt and get it gone, so you can start investing for the savings, and in particular, in my case, investing for early retirement.
I think it is really important for people to do that if they don't. I come from a situation, which is probably why this stuff was so important to me. I was raised in a family who really struggled immensely financially. And so it's caused me to live a very simple life, which is why, I probably have a little bit left over, is because I have looked around and decided I'm going to drive, a 15-year-old truck, and I really don't care. I drive a pickup truck. Anyways, so yeah, taking some steps back and looking at what you actually need. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about doing that, because it's so easy to get sucked into, everything that people, tell us that we need, which we really don't need.
Yeah, it's that whole consumerism
Yep.
trap you get put into. And once you can see it from the outside, it's a beautiful thing. Just living a frugal life, and the pride. I mean, just the feeling of having savings in your own account. Self-insurance, as Kevin, calls it. It's really just you don't have to worry about all these crazy backup and emergency plans, because you have funds, you really have money that can take care of those times when you might need it, because it will happen. I mean, at some point, either maybe you won't be able to work, or maybe you'll need to take time off because of emotional or family reasons. Things happen, and just knowing you have your finances in order is a truly, truly peaceful place to be, and can give you a lot of power to, work different jobs or live where you want to live. It just opens up so many more opportunities.
And it's definitely one thing I've noticed with a lot of people teaching a financial peace course is that if someone has other stressors in their life, like if they have car problems, the car breaks down. Well, if they don't have the money to fix the car, they now have car problems, and now they have money problems, and that's just stressful. And sometimes that will lead to marriage problems. And it's just so much stress in your life. That's all because you don't have $300 to put a new part in the car. Just those basics, getting those basics down can cause you so much relief in other areas of your life.
Okay, so I'm going to back up to my question earlier, where I was talking about, I was already maxing out my 401k, and then I was going to max out the Roth IRA. But I think potentially, not everyone is familiar with the differences between a 401k, an IRA, and a Roth IRA. So can you guys talk about that as far as your different investing options?
Sure. So your 401k is your typical employer provided retirement savings account that you'll see, where you can put in money pre-tax into a retirement account. But usually what you'll see with most of those is that they're very limited with the funds that you can choose from to invest in. And this is for a lot of times long-term retirement planning. A lot of people, when they put money into these accounts, they're thinking about retiring in their 60s. And that's why a lot of people don't put a whole lot into them. We see that, I guess, after that, that's when we start thinking about the IRAs. And you have two different types of IRAs you can put money into. Again, most typically thought of as long-term retirement accounts. The traditional IRA, which works similar to the 401k in regards to taxes, as you'll put money in there and you'll get a tax deduction for the money you put into the IRA. And later on, when you go to withdraw it, you'll have to pay taxes on the withdrawals later on. Whereas the Roth, you've already paid taxes on the money that you're then putting into the Roth IRA. So later on, when you go to withdraw it, you don't have to worry about paying taxes on those earnings. Now,
well, maybe you were going to get to this, but like one thing that I didn't realize that you told me, Sean, which makes a ton of sense as you're saying you don't really have a savings account, is using the Roth IRA as your savings. Because I didn't realize, like you had told me, that I can withdraw anything that I put in minus the earnings.
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages to the Roth IRA, in my opinion, over the traditional. A lot of times people only talk about the tax in predictions, really. Like, I don't know what the taxes are going to be down the road. Am I going to take a bet on them being higher or lower? But really, there's so many other benefits of a Roth IRA, in my opinion. One of those being that, you can withdraw the contributions at any time because it's your money. You pay taxes on it. You put it in there. You can take it out for an emergency if you need to. As long as you don't take out any of the earnings, that you won't be penalized on it. So, yes, that's why I personally choose to use the Roth as where I put my emergency money, because I can invest it and still get earnings. And then if I need to, though, I can take out the contribution portion and use it for something. So that's why I really like the Roth. It's also a very good it's a very good account to have in my plan for early retirement, because I never knew this. And this is when I really started ramping up my 401k and IRA contributions, is when I realized that there's this thing called a Roth IRA conversion ladder. I won't get into too much of the details right now, but basically you can take money from your 401k. If I was to quit my job when I'm ready to retire early, and I can use the 401k money, convert it into a Roth IRA, along with money I've maybe already been putting into a Roth, and I can use that before 60 years old because I'll be in the lowest tax bracket, and be able to use that to fund early retirement. There's a lot of details around that. I won't get into it too much, but basically these IRAs and 401ks, the tax advantages alone in them, even though the investment options might not be as good in a 401k, whereas in an IRA you can invest in any fund in the market, still maxing out both of those completely, in my opinion, are the most important things to do before you even think about opening up like a brokerage account to buy other stocks, because the costs are the most important thing you want to minimize when you're investing ever, and taxes is always going to be your biggest cost.
And I invest in a traditional IRA because I own my own business. I can really use the tax deductions now, whereas when I'm closer to pulling money out of that fund, I'll be in a lower tax bracket, and I can pay lower taxes than I would now. Another thing I do that a lot of people don't realize is if you have an HSA, you can also use that as an additional investment device or retirement device. So you can max out your IRA or Roth IRA. You can also use an HSA as a retirement device and max that out every year. And it goes towards medical funds or medical expenses if you need those.
Don't wait for users to report problems. Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. You can replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files and having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications. It has full support for JavaScript and all other major languages and platforms. It takes less than 10 minutes to set up, and you can get a free 14-day trial by going to raygun.com and signing up today.
Sorry, Amy.
Nope, you answered my question because I was afraid maybe not everybody knew what an HSA was. But
health savings account. That's right.
So let's pretend that I'm a complete and total nerd. And that was supposed to be funny. And
I laughed.
Anyway,
I wasn't fast enough on mute, but trust me, I laughed.
Let's pretend. There's no pretending.
So let's say, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, well, which of these is right for me? And it seems like, okay, well, if you're in this situation, do this. And if you're in this situation, do this. But I'm a complete and total nerd. So I want to plug everything into a spreadsheet or write a little script in Ruby or JavaScript that's going to crunch a whole bunch of numbers and say, you know what? You're probably going to be better off going this way than that way. And then I can get input from an accountant or from a tax attorney or from both and kind of go about that way. So are there tools or algorithms or good ways that I can kind of geek out on this stuff and go, all right,
I'm going to figure this stuff out, or even just in my personal finances with my budget, okay, I'm going to grind some numbers through and see what happens.
Yeah. A lot of times when you're going to do calculations with investing, you're usually talking about how you're going to divide up your portfolio, usually between a mix of stocks, bonds, real estate, and maybe international or global. So a lot of the calculations I do personally are around that. So what portion of my portfolio is going to be overseas or domestic? And of course, the only thing we have right now to do those predictions are the past, right? All we really have is historical performance. And depending on the time when you start those calculations is always going to vary what your results may be, whether it's just the past 20 years or past 30 years and what market corrections or recessions you may have included in those calculations. The cool thing is there are great tools out there for it. One of them I can think of right away is Portfolio Visualizer. I use a lot, where I can pick different portfolio mixes, put different amounts of money in each one, and I can say between these time frames, where would I be? I personally use that to figure out my portfolio to fund early retirement. In another case, another good one I think is actually called Portfolio Charts as well, which does something very similar, but gives you kind of nice graphics as well on top of it. In my case, some of these require many fields and many entries and to perform those kind of calculations. One of the things I care about is early retirement predictions. So I have this much money, I'm saving this much a year. I think I can get this % every year. These are my expenses. When can I retire? That's why I put up fireagecalc.com, which is just a simple JavaScript one-page website I just put out there for free for people to use that kind of helps predict early retirement if that's a thing that you care about. But those are the main tools I kind of used because really the hardest part is calculating your return. You have to estimate what your average return would be year after year. And a lot of times the biggest mistake people make is they look for the fund with the highest return, average return. I know a lot of people that go put money in their 401ks. I know I did this when I was first starting to invest money in my 401k. When you see the fund options for the first time, you just kind of look through them. Okay, which one has the highest average return since inception, or maybe just the past 20 to 30 years? And that's a huge mistake because maybe over that long period of time it does, but when you look at the actual per year returns, you'll see that, like, for instance, the S&P 500, sometimes when it went down, maybe it went down like 38% in a year. And that's huge. The biggest thing you want to try to do, yes, you want to get a good return, but you also want to try to minimize your losses, more importantly. So that's why diversification is a big deal. So a lot of your calculations are going to be around trying to diversify your portfolio between the right mix of stocks, bonds, and real estate. And I personally do 40% total stock market, 20% international stock market, 20% intermediate bonds, and 20% real estate investment trust. So I have a pretty good mix to still get some pretty good gains, but also minimize the losses because real estate and bonds both have a low correlation, which is R squared for those financial people out there that may understand that. Low correlation to stocks. So real estate and bonds, they don't always move in the opposite directions. That's a fallacy, but they tend to not move in the same direction. So having a good mix of things that don't move in the same direction as stocks, and then sometimes when the U.S. is doing bad, the international is doing good. So that's why diversification is so huge, because you want some years where you at least get some return versus going years with no return or negative return. I mean, that's just detrimental for your investments.
I always thought it was good to hear Sean, because I always was like under the impression that I was making a huge, like colossal mistake. Like obviously it's not the smartest thing in the world, but like I'm renting right now because I'm, I just kind of moved back to Nashville. But you had said, like, as long as I was diversified, if I did open like a brokerage account and I'm looking at my notes that I took that you gave me, like put 20% in a real estate fund, like that would kind of diversify me without having to like actually feel like I was making a big mistake by not like owning my own home right now.
And if you look at the statistics over the past 100 years or so, the stock market, the only person that would have ever made a mistake by investing is by not investing. So even if you had made bad investments, you would still have earned out more than a person that did not invest at all. So just putting your money somewhere then other than your mattress is a good first move.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, because we know how inflation just eats away at that money that's not doing anything.
I've heard that too. Like, I know I watch Kramer sometimes a little bit, Jim Kramer, and like...
Booyah, Jim.
Yeah, and like, you know, some people talk about kind of like trying to like ride the stock market, and I guess that's good if you know what you're doing and you have the time to keep up with it, but like he kind of always says, like, if you're just kind of like in it for the long haul, you're okay. Most definitely.
So Jim Kramer, that's actually, I remember when I first started getting involved in the stock market, I read his Mad Money books.
Yep.
I love Jim. I think he's an awesome dude. Go Eagles. But anyways, the bad thing is when I was really paying attention to Jim Kramer, I was trying to trade stocks. I was trying to pick stocks. I was trying to basically day trade and pick winners. And unfortunately, that was also right before the 2008 crash. So I lost a lot of money actually by trying to do that. And yes, I did get some tax deductions from those losses, but the times that I actually did make money, I had huge tax hits because a lot of people don't realize that there's huge tax implications if you trade something under a year versus if you held on to it for over a year, which is, like you just mentioned, long-term investing. That's the difference between, you know, being an investor and being a trader. We're in it for the buy and hold operation, and that usually is going to entail low-cost index fund investing, which we highly recommend using something like Vanguard. They've been around so long, and their funds usually have the lowest cost, highest performing funds, not trying to pick like individual stocks or bonds to win it.
And we're not paid by Vanguard to say that, but if they would like to pay us, we would gladly accept.
So guys, can we back up to the beginning? I was interested in what you pointed out about the fiduciary duty and having a fiduciary advisor. I have pretty early on been skeptical of that whole industry for a few different reasons. For one thing, I, strangely enough, interviewed there early on when I was considering graduating college a little bit early, and then decided to stay and go into comp sci instead. But long story short, came to realize that there were some problems with exactly what you were getting at, with people not being honest about the reasons they were making recommendations. So my question is, if you get one of these advisors, what sorts of advice are you really looking for from them? And what sorts of things would you say they shouldn't be advising?
So in my opinion, the biggest thing is you want someone that tries to understand your unique situation, because it really, we all hate hearing it, but the two words, it depends. I mean, you hope that your financial advisor knows that, and it really does depend. Like if they say, hey, you're 55, so that means you should have 55% of bonds, then that's so wrong, because this is one person at 55 could have totally different financial, excuse me, financial goals than someone else at 55 that has, a different year for retirement or different plans. Maybe they want to buy a house. So, excuse me. So you really want to find a financial advisor that wants to understand your life and wants to understand what you're trying to save for and wants to help you get there in the least cost way possible. Not to harp on Vanguard again, but I did look into Vanguard's fiduciary services. They have pretty low costs. I think it's like 0.3% of your portfolio, which is low for a financial advisor. Usually most financial advisors, like fiduciary ones, will, I think, charge you anywhere from like 1 to 2% per year of your portfolio for advising, where the broker ones will charge you basically commissions on products. And we've seen financial advisors that are actually both. They say they're a fiduciary, but they actually also sell products that are commission-based products. So they try to get you in the door, and then at the same time, they also have some special interest. So it's really hard to find someone that really cares about that situation for you. But as long as they don't just show you the returns, they're also showing you the cost and being open with those about you and saying, hey, this is what we did for your portfolio. You're trying to save for this. So this is why we divided your portfolio into this asset allocation. And as long as they can just answer those simple questions and in a way that you would understand it, and not try to come up with excuses every time that the markets are doing bad. The biggest thing a a financial advisor, I think, could help you do as well, is control your emotions. A lot of times when the market's doing really bad, that's when people want to run from it. Well, people like Kevin and I want to buy the market then because we know we're getting it at a discount. And trying to stay in when you're seeing your retirement accounts, get eaten in half is really hard to do. But if you pull it out, it's never going to, recover. And a lot of times on the upswing, you would have maybe double what you had before. So, just finding a good advisor that can tell you those things, and also maybe be honest about, hey, we're not trying to beat the market. We can't beat the market. Almost all hedge funds, financial advisors cannot beat the market. There may be 2 people I can think of that have done it and maybe can somewhat consistently, but usually you cannot time the market, and you can't beat the market, or you can't do it consecutive years. And a lot of people that try to time the market, basically they're going to be financial advisors that are trying to trade actively. And if you're trading actively, then that usually means that you're selling investments under a year, which you're going to get, the tax implications are going to be passed on to you as the client. So you're going to get, a huge IRS bill at the end of the year because your trader was trying to get you higher returns. And in the end, after the taxes, you actually got lower returns than the market. So that's a few things to watch out for.
And
yes.
Oh, sorry. I was going to make one just quick addition. If you look at folks like Warren Buffett, who make a ton of money in the stock market, they don't live by the rule of, can I time the market? They live by the rule of, how do I not lose money? And if you start adopting that own rule in your own investing, how do I not lose money? You'll go a longer way.
Good stuff. I agree with everything you guys said there. I'm curious if you'd agree with me on this. Through a series of reading, I've come to the conclusion that I don't believe that mutual funds are a logical thing to be doing. I think that index funds are the way to go, because mutual funds are a bit like throwing a dart at a dartboard. Do you guys feel that way?
Yeah, so we completely agree with index funds. Now, index funds still are mutual funds, but they follow an index. So we recommend index mutual funds. Now, there's active managed funds as well, which we don't recommend, which is the ones you're probably referring to there. But yes, we all of my personal investments are index mutual funds. They follow an index. They follow either the total stock market index, the S&P 500 index, the bond indexes, the real estate indexes. So yeah, that's something that you'll hear Kevin and I preach over and over again.
Cool. Do you guys want to clarify quickly why index funds are such a win?
Go ahead, Sean.
Or even explain what they are to our listener.
Yeah, basically index fund. So I'll just talk about the index in general here. Let's talk about the total stock market index fund. So basically, me as an investor, I can buy an index fund at a portion of the cost it would cost me to actually buy the whole index, and that's basically what you can do here. So let's say the S&P 500, there's 500 stocks that index will follow. So in other words, the returns, the performance of those 500 stocks, the index tracks those, and a mutual fund against that index will try to follow the same or try to buy and sell the stocks in that index in order to follow that index's performance as best as possible. So you as an investor can get the ability to invest in all those 500 stocks without actually having to buy them all. You can just buy into this mutual fund that takes care of it for you.
And to that same idea, if I want to invest in, say, technology companies, I don't have to independently invest in Microsoft, Apple, IBM, etc. I could invest in a technology index that would look at just the top performing technology companies. And Sean and I do that for S&P 500. We do it for international funds. We do it for bonds. Basically, every type of investment out there has an index associated with it, and it's generally a better value.
Now, I read Money Master the Game by, what's his name? Tony Robbins?
Tony Robbins.
And he one of the strategies that he recommends is exactly that, so you invest in the index funds. And the reason he says that they work is not necessarily because they follow a specific set of stocks, so much as the fact that because the indexes don't change often, they don't buy and sell often, and so you don't incur the fees that you were talking about earlier. Is that generally the reason why those work out, or are there other reasons why those are a better deal?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's one of the reasons. There's many reasons, but that actually makes them more tax efficient. Which again, taxes are going to be your biggest cost. So yeah, these another thing, the rate the actual amount or the pace that you buy and sell stocks within your mutual fund is called the turnover rate. So a lot of people, when they look at their expense ratio on a mutual fund, that's all they look at. But there's these other metrics on the fund as well that they should be looking at, which is the turnover rate, which tells how often you're selling those stocks. And yes, with an index fund, you're typically going to depending on the index, because there's many indexes out there, but so your more common ones like the total stock market index fund that we've been talking about here is going to sell and buy stocks at a much lower rate, usually over a year at a time. You're not going to sell anything, you're not going to hold on to anything for less than a year. Another thing I want to mention, just for people that are maybe starting off with their 401k, because I think it's the place where most people start investing, you'll have some of these index fund options available, or maybe like with the IRA, you can invest in any fund in the market, but with your 401k, you're limited. So a lot of times we just try to find like an index fund that maybe matches closely to the S&P 500 or the total stock market or the bond market, where you'll also have some other, I guess, strange fund options in your 401k as well. And you look at some of the expense ratios for those, and they're probably a lot higher because they're probably trying to trade actively. But a big mistake a lot of people make is investing in their own company. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this right now are doing that. And I think that's the number one thing people need to not do, because if your company, God forbid anything were to happen to your company, there goes your retirement, because everything you're investing in your 401k is now gone as well, or it's reduced a lot. So if you get laid off, maybe the company's not doing well, the stock's not doing well, you've been investing the whole time, and now your stock's basically worthless and you just lost your job. That's a bad place to be in. And I know like investing in your 401k is kind of a weird thing at first, because I remember my wife saying this. I remember thinking this at first, like you just put a little, maybe 4 to 5% in there in the beginning, and you just kind of feel like you never see that money. Like people don't really see 401k as savings. They don't calculate it in their savings. They just think it's money that's going to eventually turn into over $1 million, in my 60s, and I'll care about it then. But that's your savings. And when you're calculating your savings rate, when you're figuring out your budget every month, it's important to figure, to put that number into consideration. And that's a lot of times when we talk about paying yourself first, that's where you can pay yourself first, is by putting more money in your retirement accounts.
And don't forget with 401ks, only put enough in your 401k to get your matching. Most 401ks are not very good. So get your matching, but then put your money into better investment devices like your IRA or Roth IRA, HSA, put them into funds that you can actively control. 401ks out there, many of them they decide for you, and you don't have a very good fund range to choose from. So just take what you can get out of it, but then put the rest into better devices. And if you're like Aimee and you have all this money left over, then you can probably
like I said, I'm driving a 15-year-old pickup truck, so I'm living pretty frugally.
But you could put more money back in your 401k later if you wanted to. But just hit your matching and then put your money into better investments.
So one question I have here then is, I don't know, it kind of came out of when you said investing in your own company isn't the best way to go. But me investing in my own company is investing in my company, right? Because I'm self-employed. So it seems like that's somewhere where I can put money and I have better opportunities to, grow the value there. I have more control that way. And so I'm wondering, how much do I invest in my business versus putting stuff into a Roth IRA or 401k or something like that?
I think that really comes down to retirement goals, honestly. Now, earlier, correct, I was speaking from the employee perspective, right, where you'd be investing in your company stock. But yes, in your case, I think it comes down to the point where you're ready to collect money passively, where, right now, you could probably most definitely get a higher return by maybe automating more in your company or growing your company and getting money through different projects that you could fund with your income. But at some point, you're probably gonna want to some money to come in passively and hopefully maybe retire in the future. Some people never want to retire, and that's okay too. But to at least think about that, or to grow your money that's just sitting there, that's an option as for investing for retirement, really. I mean, if you can passively, put X amount of dollars into your company and you're just pushing that off maybe to a VA or a contractor or some automation, then yeah, that could definitely be looked at as a form of an investment, right? Maybe you've done the calculations on, hey, I'm putting X amount of dollars into my business for certain things and I'm getting X return back. And hey, that's a better return than I could definitely get even after taxes versus putting that money into an investment. I'm curious how Kevin handles that though, or what his thought process is around the extra money he has in his business.
Extra money in my business. you say it so like there's like I'm an Aimee Knight.
Why do you keep talking about
Yeah, I imagine Amy in her little itty bitty apartment, but she's sitting on a stack of cash right now, and she's gonna dab her sweat with it.
Like I just put in the chat, like I live in this like little tiny apartment. I drive a really old truck. Like it just goes back to the way I was raised. So I sound like I have all this, but it's only because I like love to live with margin and not be strapped, because I spent 15 years like there, however long I lived at home, more than 15 years like that. So anyways.
So the way I approach kind of extra cash and investing in my business is every quarter I kind of evaluate my goals. So my goals right now is bootstrapping a training company. So I'm putting money towards setting up different curriculums. I'm investing in my time, because time I'm spending starting a new part of my company is time I'm not billing anyone. So there's no active income from that time. But I'll sit down and consider, all right, if I spend 2 weeks doing this work, what's that worth? Do I have that money set aside? All right, I do. And I pay myself monthly. So at the end of the month, will I have the money to cover my paycheck, my dividends? I also have a contractor that needs to get paid. I'm getting ready to onboard a VA, and will I have money at the end of the month to pay them as well? But having that budget in place is really important. I haven't been as good with a business budget as I am with a personal budget, but it's one of those things I'm trying to practice over and over again. It's just way too easy to stop and go. I could just go bill someone for a couple hours and make money right away almost, or I can go work on this project that will take my company a next step further, but I'm not going to see money from that right away. I'm going to see money from that maybe 3, 4, 6 months from now, or never at all. You never know.
So do you have some resources that you would recommend for people who are trying to get their heads around a lot of this stuff? Or were you going to use those for your picks?
Well, we run a podcast. 2frugaldudes.com. We're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, etc. And we just talk about this, just the life of middle class software engineers, and how to live frugal lives and set up for financial freedom. And let's see, a lot of the research I've done in my life has been through various blogs. I know there's a financial independence community on Reddit. I'm a big fan of Mr. Money Mustache. I actually wrote a book myself on this called The Early Retirement Roadmap. And I went ahead and set up a promo code Jabber for anyone interested to get 25% off. And I'm trying to think, Kevin, is there anything else that you really tend to go to outside of Dave Ramsey?
Not lately. Mostly, I've been reading a lot of blog articles. Mr. Money Mustache, I really enjoy reading his stuff. The subreddit on financial independence, that's kind of a gold mine of information, just because it's people, just ordinary people trying to do this stuff, and you pick up a lot of tidbits just from reading others' experiences.
Sounds good. Well, let's go ahead and get to some picks. This episode is sponsored by Angular Dev Summit, coming September 11th
through the 18th, 2017. Hi, it's Chuck from devchat.tv. I've reached out to some of my friends in the Angular community to put on a completely free, no-travel conference for Ruby developers. We have speakers like Rob Wermald, Jeff Welpley, and others coming to speak about all kinds of topics in Angular. So if you're trying to learn Angular or you're trying to level up Angular, come check it out. The talks are happening throughout the day each day, and we'll have a chat available during each session. Attending the talks is free, but you need to register. Go to angulardevsummit.com. Cory, do you want to start us off with picks?
Sure thing. So I have three that are a good fit for this show. The first is one of the best books that I read on investing, recommended to me from my finance professor in college, Random Walk Down Wall Street by Burton McKill. Really talks about why index funds make so much sense, why trying to beat the market is a fool's errand. Really a pretty quick read, but will help give you a vision for how to interact with the stock market in a way that is profitable. Second book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, another book I really enjoyed that
Classic.
drives home this point of that if you want to be wealthy, spend your money on assets rather than liabilities, and start looking at your life and saying, okay, what are the liabilities in my life? This is how I, as a guy that really loves cars, happen to drive a car that's 10 years old, because I keep reminding myself a car is a liability. So stop looking at those shiny Mercedes and just be content. Okay, and then finally, my third choice, which is on this realm of contentment, is the book Ego is the Enemy. I think one of the best ways to find yourself financially stable is to cut the ego. And if you want to cut your ego, then this is a great book on the topic that really points out so much of the ways that we spend money today has everything to do with trying to impress others, convince people that we are successful. And once you start realizing that one of the best ways to feel successful is to recognize that you have financial independence, that goes a long way toward financial stability. So those are my three picks.
Nice. Aimee, what are your picks?
Let's see. So the first one I'm going to go with is a Hacker News thread, how to not bring emotions from work back home with you. It's really, really, really long. So, but there's some good tidbits in here. And then, man, I have a bunch, but I don't want to spill them all at once. I feel like I need to save some. So which one am I going to go with? Let's see. I'm going to go with a new music pick. So I think a couple weeks ago I picked like Tycho and Purity Ring. And this one's one that was recommended based on Spotify based on me listening to those. And I really liked it. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I'll put a link in the show notes. I think it's like Phantogram. It's Phantogram. Anyways, they're pretty good if you liked those other two picks. And that's it for me.
All right, I'm going to jump in with a few picks. Now, I mentioned one already, and that is Money, Master the Game by Tony Robbins. One other thing that I'm going to pick, and this is something that's helped me out in quite a few ways. We've mentioned Dave Ramsey a few times, and he has ELPs, which are, I forget what it stands for, endorsed local providers. And so essentially they're people who help with insurance or real estate, or, you know, those are kind of the people that I've gone to. I've also talked to some financial planners that are, you know, endorsed local providers, and they kind of have to do things Dave Ramsey's way. But, you know, I think his advice is fairly sound. And so you can go and you can talk to them and go with somebody that they've actually vetted, which is nice. And so if you're shopping around for insurance, that saved me a bunch of money. Or if you're working in some of these other areas, then yeah, I definitely recommend that you go check them out and see what they have to offer there. And yeah, those are my picks. Sean, what are your picks?
All right, so I think I mentioned all kinds of stuff already in the podcast today randomly, but on top of everything, a great book I would recommend is The Little Book of Common Sense Investing. This is a book by the legendary Jack Bogle of Vanguard, and I think it just hits you in the head how easy this stuff can really be if you try to do it yourself instead of funding a financial advisor to do it for you, who could potentially be losing you a lot of money. Secondly, behind that, the blog that really helped me the most and made me realize that early retirement was a possibility was MrMoneyMustache.com. He takes it a little to the extreme. He's really big into early retirement, but also really big into saving the world and reducing overconsumption. And he's definitely got his own flair to the blog, but really enjoy reading that. And the last thing, I think this is most important and something that anyone considering financial independence or just tracking or really just trying to get a hold of their finances should consider is just mint.com. So, go on mint.com and you can just add all your accounts. You can see your whole financial picture right in front of you. I mean, it automatically brings in all your transactions, all your retirement accounts. You just got to give it the login information. You can see what your current net worth is today. You can see where you stand, and that's your net worth can basically be a metric that you can follow and track as you start making improvements in your life. But the more importantly, allows you to set up a budget, a monthly budget, and you can pick categories and start flagging transactions towards specific categories. So you can see how you're doing every month on your budget and set new goals to achieve even better financial freedom.
Awesome. Kevin, what are your picks?
I'm going to piggyback off both Charles, you and Sean. So Charles, you mentioned Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins actually has a new book out called Unshakable, which I would call the Cliff Notes of Money Master the Game. It's Money Master Game is kind of a beefy read, and I completely recommend reading it. But if you just want the important stuff, read Unshakable first. Sean and I did a book study on the podcast of Unshakable, and there's a lot of good information in there. Number two, Sean mentioned budgets. YNAB, You Need a Budget, is a great tool if you've never done a budget before and you're just kind of learning. It will tie into your bank accounts and it'll help you organize all your cash. And YNAB started as an Excel spreadsheet long time ago, and now it's a fully featured tool. So it's also a great entrepreneur success story. But my real pick initially was going to be The Millionaire Next Door, which Aimee kind of reminded me of because it's all about how
that's like how I live.
Exactly. It's so it's by Thomas Stanley. If he went and he looked at the traits of just wealthy people, and wealthy people do not live and act the way that they're personified on TV or in the media. They drive 15-year-old cars. They wear old tennis shoes. They don't live in the most expensive house in a neighborhood. It's a really surprising read, and you can get an idea of if you want to actually be a millionaire, you should start acting like one, and they don't act like they do on TV. So those are my picks.
Good stuff.
Nice. Interesting story. I've met Jesse, who's the founder of YNAB. He actually lives here in Lehigh, so...
oh, does he? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyway, just interesting stuff, but it's a terrific program. Great picks. All right. Well, if people want to check you guys out, Two Frugal Dudes, anything else, Twitter, GitHub, anything else that they should go look at?
Yeah. I'll say we are on Twitter at Two Frugal Dudes, as well as myself at Sean Merron and Kevin at OneKevGriff. If you're interested in retiring early, you can check out earlyretirementroadmap.com. And Kevin, your company is located at?
I'm at swiftkick.in. And I have kevgriffin.com if you just want to read my babbling.
Nice.
And if you're really serious about getting on this whole frugal train and making changes, we also have a mailing list on the podcast to try and give some additional frugal tips and recommendations that I would suggest getting on.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave all of that as an exercise to the listener, and we will catch everyone next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more.